Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Today is the last episode of Season 2. I can't believe we've already wrapped up 2 amazing seasons. This has been 77 episodes of interviews talking about every type of infertility and loss. And I have so enjoyed speaking with so many wonderful and amazing people. I'll actually tell you something funny about me. I hate being on the phone. I do anything possible to not have to call people. It gives me so much anxiety. I don't like doing it. So when I decided to start the podcast, I was asking myself, are you crazy? You're going to have to talk to people, which is something you hate. But honestly, it doesn't feel the same. Truly, these conversations, they're so important and so touching and heartfelt. And it's something I'm truly passionate about, that I don't have the anxiety about these. I am honored to be able to be part of sharing all these stories and helping to bring hope to others going through infertility and loss. So Season 3 will be back in August, so now it's time to catch up on all of the episodes that you have missed before another great season starts. The business spotlight today is on reclaiming ritual. Here's what the founder, Shira, had to say. Hi, my name is Shira Collings, and I'm a recurrent pregnancy loss mom. I experienced my first pregnancy loss in December 2022, followed by 3 subsequent losses since then. Each loss has been utterly devastating. One of the most painful parts of my experience is the way that pregnancy loss is so often minimized and dismissed, and not seen as a real loss. Despite the countless hours I spent thinking about and grieving my babies, trying to honor their memories, and receiving medical treatment to be able to have a living baby, I'm rarely recognized as a mom. While people who experience other types of losses are often given space to grieve and communal support through funerals and memorials, lost moms are expected not to talk about our babies or our pregnancies, and to move on as if this is part of our lives that had never happened. I decided to start Reclaiming Ritual to change this. I became certified as a Jewish life cycle ceremonialist in order to legitimize and commemorate life events that are often unrecognized and invisible in our culture. I believe that ceremony can be a powerful way to honor the lives of the babies we've lost and the babies we wish for, and to acknowledge and be seen as parents. Through Reclaiming Ritual, I provide individualized ceremonies to honor each person's unique experience of loss and/or infertility, and each person's identity as a parent. I ultimately see my role as not only officiating ceremonies, but redefining the idea of what constitutes a life cycle event worth honoring. When we only commemorate birth, coming of age, weddings, and funerals, we miss so many other experiences that are part of the life cycle for many people. We miss the opportunity to support people however their lives unfold. While my experience with pregnancy loss is what originally inspired me to start Reclaiming Ritual, I also was inspired to craft rituals for other types of life cycle events that are often unrecognized in our culture. Some examples include mental health recovery, gender transition, deciding to be child-free, career advancement, forming chosen family, and even pet adoption. I believe that ritual can be important not only in honoring loss, but also in celebrating all of the ways that we can grow our families and our lives. If you'd like to learn more about Reclaiming Ritual, you can visit our website at reclaimingritual.com. Thank you for listening and sending so much love to all of my fellow lost parents. Thank you so much, Shira, for sharing about your business with us. Today, I am talking with Tasha. She is an integrative clinical nutritionist and a certified personal trainer who specializes in hormones. She talks about her 6 autoimmune disorders and how she took them under control and was able to wean off her anxiety medicine. Tasha talks about the importance of understanding our hormones and our bodies to improve our fertility. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Tasha. Tasha, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. And I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. So I am an integrative clinical nutritionist, certified personal trainer, and I specialize in hormones, but personally live with 6 autoimmune conditions and chronic anxiety. And I kind of stumbled into this because of how sick and how frustrated I was and the lack of support that I was able to get around that. And over my health journey, but over the past 4 years now, being able to share this and work with women, I've coached over 2,000 women in addressing their unique conditions, medical needs, struggles and frustrations by addressing the root cause of system and hormone dysfunction. So really excited to share more and, support you and in the community in any way.
And see, I love this topic because I think all of this hormones and everything in general is something that so many of us don't know anything about. We're not taught anything about it.
Oh my God, and it's so crazy because now looking back on it, like thinking about how much little information I had, growing up as a girl, right? Growing up, in middle school and get your first period. I'm like, well, how is this not like standard education? It needs to be because our hormones influence every single part of our health as women. And then we have these very, very distinct hormonal shifts across our life, whether it's puberty, second puberty, pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, like it's important. And I love being able to share that because when we understand our hormones, that's when we can really start to empower our own health journeys. And it's truly enlightening.
Yeah, like I speaking of like, what we learn in school, I feel like all you learn about is, well, you're going to have this period every 28 days, which isn't even an accurate number for everybody. And
No.
yeah, that's it. Have fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
And and when you really get down to it, you're like, okay, wait, like I remember being in high school thinking that like, oh, okay, like I could get pregnant at any time, like not fully understanding that there's only like a 5-day fertile window, right?
Yes.
I always remember feeling like something was off in my body. And I always remember like telling my doctors, like, I think it's my hormones. I feel like it's this hormonal birth control or whatever. And they were just like, no, it's fine. This is normal for women. And it's, now looking back on it, I'm like, oh my gosh, my autoimmune conditions stem from hormone imbalance. My chronic anxiety stemmed from hormone imbalance, stress addiction, all of that stuff. Like every single thing that I struggled with can be tied back to that. And you're just like, oh, okay, wow. Like when you understand something, you're like, I can make an informed decision about how to support it. And I think it takes us out of that, really stressful space of like, I don't know what's going on to my body to like, oh, okay, I understand and I can now make that like active choice to support it.
I find it so frustrating, how many times people or doctors I've heard have just said, "Oh, that's just something you deal with as women." Like,
I
like, are you serious right now? You know?
I like literally, so when I was 23, I remember getting diagnosed with like my 5 autoimmune conditions at that point. Gosh, it's a Monday. I was struggling with that word today. But then also like I had gained 30 pounds in a single month. And at that point, like my anxiety was crippling to the point where I was having like multiple panic attacks at a time and at a day. I worked at a gym at that point, and I would have to like run off of the fitness floor to go into like the back stairway because I was having panic attacks where I like couldn't be around anyone. And I remember sitting on that, darn bed in the doctor's office and just my doctor saying to me, like, this is normal for women. I was like, you mean to tell me that I'm just doomed to continue to gain weight and to be crippled by my anxiety? And he just prescribed me some Paxil, which is now one of like the most archaic drugs for like women and anxiety. And I was like, really? You got to be kidding me. Like, it's awful. It's awful.
I don't know why it reminds me of, you hear like the stories of how they used to just prescribe women with like hysteria and send them on their way.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
like really, are we still at that point now? Pretty
Yeah.
much.
Oh, and I know one of the topics we really wanted to dive into, like knowing that anxiety is related to hormone disruptions, knowing that it's related to chronic hormone and system imbalances. It's like, oh my goodness, like life could have been so much easier. It is so much easier now. I've been off anxiety medication for the last 8 years, and it's all just because of addressing hormones. And it's truly life changing. Like, oh, I'm so excited to share more.
Yeah, anxiety is definitely something I struggle with. And I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was 16. I
Mm.
only recently learned in this past year that anxiety is highly related to PCOS, which, is a hormonal disorder. And I'm like, why did I not know this until I was 36 years old?
Right?
You
Like,
know? So I know you said that it took a while for you to get diagnosed with your disorders. How did that come about?
absolutely. So, like I said, probably when I got my period, fun anecdote. I got my period when I was 9, terrible.
Oh,
And I like went into puberty really early. I had these crazy, crazy heavy periods. And then by the time I was 14, I had a very traumatic appendectomy. I went sepsis. I was in the hospital for, over a month, and they were like, "Oh, she's not going to make it." I did make it. But after that, I was just sick all the time. That's when my anxiety started to get really bad. That is when I was very like, I was always bloated. I was going to the bathroom constantly. I was getting sick, like stomach sick all the time. And when I was 19, I had gotten to the point where I couldn't eat any food. I was literally like 100 pounds, just like crippled on my couch. And I finally got a doctor to be willing to do an endoscopy and colonoscopy. And at that time, I was diagnosed with 2 autoimmune conditions, which is celiac and lymphocytic colitis. And so I was like, okay, cool. I was getting my degree in nutrition at the time. I was like, okay, these can be absolutely supported with nutrition. I feel good. I feel confident. Like I feel like I'm on the right path. And then that's when I briefly alluded to it. By the time I graduated and I was 23, landed my dream job, I gained that 30 pounds in a month. And my anxiety was through the roof bad at that point. I would sleep 12 hours a night and still be exhausted. There was literally, I felt like my body was just giving up on me. And at that point, after being brushed off by that initial doctor, I reached out to some partners that I worked with, some integrative physicians that I worked with, and got really interested in the integrative realm of nutrition and of health because it was more proactive rather than reactive. And that's then when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, psoriasis, and then at the time they thought I had it's known as autoimmune hepatitis, but literally my body was just so stressed out and in such like a turmoil that it was attacking my liver. So at that point I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like I know that nutrition is powerful. I don't believe that this is just my fate, that I have to be stuck here. And I was like, I feel like my hormones are at like have something to do with it. At the time, I was on the Mirena IUD and it was causing like havoc. Like it was breakthrough bleeding. I was like, this thing is not good in my body. I feel like my body's rejecting it. And so that's when I really started to understand and study the impacts of hormones and how they function in our body and like what they truly mean to our health. And so, with adapting how I ate, right, with adding in principles of how I eat, how I work out, how I live my life to align with my cycle, um, that's how I really kind of took back control of my life. And now it's been, gosh, I can't even math. I'm 31, so it's been many years since 6 years-ish later, I would say actively. All of my autoimmune conditions, I manage 100% without medication. I got off anxiety medication 8 years ago. And more like really importantly, they told me that I was not going to be able to have children just with how sick I was. And I was fortunate enough to have like my beautiful daughter who's 18 months, with no issue, complication, need for fertility treatment. So really it was painstaking. Like it wasn't an easy journey, but to understand that how your hormones fluctuate across your month, right? How they fluctuate each and every day dictates how you feel, how much energy your needs, what your body can handle. It dictates how your body responds to dopamine, serotonin, these hormones that influence anxiety. And when you live in that way, right? And you, instead of, for years, I spent so much time trying to force my body into submission because I was frustrated with it, dieting, a lot of workouts, cutting carbs, restricting food, starting these crazy, inflammation protocols that were like crazy elimination diets. And instead, I said, no, I'm going to focus on nourishing my systems. Like nutrition truly is the science of nourishing your body to sustain life. And I was like, I'm not doing that right now. I am depriving it. I am beating my body down. I'm not taking care of it. And that switch alone, right? That switch, that breakup with diet culture, that focus on hormones, that focus on nourishment, like that is the catalyst. And I think that's where most women struggle. If I'm being very honest, in the 2000, like women that I've coached, most of us are unintentionally, right? Whether we think we are or not nourishing our body. And that's perpetuating hormone imbalance, which is then perpetuating things like anxiety, PCOS, hormone disruption, you name it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I think, as part of the diet culture, we just like you mentioned, we just try to eliminate things, but we don't focus on like adding in the good things. Or, it's just okay, well, we can't eat this, but we don't focus on, okay, well, maybe we can eat this sometimes, but let's add in all these other things over here that are good for us.
Yeah. And that's what I, tell my clients all the time. Like hormone, how I approach this. And it's hormone balance is not about what you restrict, right? It's what you can add to your life to nourish not only your body, but your soul, right? And when you think about that, like, for example, with anxiety, a lot of it stems from disruptions with blood sugar. And so you have these crazy blood sugar crashes, drops in insulin function that then influence your sympathetic nervous system, which leads to rises in cortisol and crazy disruptions on dopamine and serotonin. And so even just focusing on eating at a regular interval, eating carbohydrates just promote serotonin production, like that goes so against what we hear for women because it's like don't eat carbs and fast or whatever, but really that's not perpetuating a space of healing, and instead just nourishing your systems, and your body's like, oh, okay, thank you, like because your body loves you, it wants to take care of you, it wants to make sure that you can do everything in your life that you dream of doing. And so when you start to fuel it and love it and appreciate it, it says, oh my gosh, thank you so much for this, I can now do the job that I'm designed to do.
And I know you mentioned this a little bit too. And I know this is something that a lot of people, dealing with infertility and loss deal with is just being angry at your body for not doing what you want it to do when you want it to do it, So, I mean, how is that something that you think you can overcome?
That's such a, it's not, I have to say this, like, it's not an easy journey, especially when we have these expectations that we set on ourselves and our body to perform or to provide. One thing I always tell my clients is that it starts, it seems so cheesy, but it starts with how you visualize yourself, and how you speak to yourself. The best way to think of it is like, okay, if you're in a relationship, whether it's, romantic or a friend, like if they speak poorly about you, if they don't compliment you, if they nitpick everything that's wrong with you, like it's not a good relationship. Typically you end up like breaking up with the person or leaving that friend because it's not supportive or a good environment to be in. And so the same is true with your relationship with your body and self, right? How you speak about yourself, how you envision yourself, the thoughts that you hold about yourself, like that directly feeds into your stress and emotional, physical, right? It manifests. So even starting with, saying how much you love and appreciate your body, envisioning that most viable, successful, healthy version of you, and seeing that person and how vibrant they can be and what they have done to get to that space, right? So it kind of starts with visualization, because when you speak about yourself and know that your value and your worth are all there, then your actions can align to that. And then a second space is again, just I think for women, peeling back the layers of like, okay, nutrition is not a diet. Nutrition is not a diet. Nutrition is to sustain and support life, right? And especially in that journey of, fertility and trying to get pregnant, we're trying to create a space and environment where your body feels safe to not only take care of you, but bring on a new life. Like, from a very biological standpoint, your body has this cue almost. So over the years, our body have created protective mechanisms to ensure that it can protect you, it can keep you alive. And if it feels threatened, it can literally shut off the opportunity to procreate or to go into gestation because of the fact it's like, oh my gosh, if this environment is not safe and I can barely keep, Sarah alive, for example, how the heck am I supposed to, also keep Sarah plus one alive? So when we peel back the layers of understanding the physiology of that a little bit, then I think it's also easy to say like, okay, I now love, I support myself. I see that best version of myself. Okay, now I also understand that nutrition is not a diet. Nutrition doesn't create, or a diet doesn't create that safe environment. So how can I do that? Okay, I nourish my body. I eat in alignment with my hormones. I focus on what I can add. And again, those two actions alone and together create an environment that can now perpetuate and support healing.
I like that. And it sounds so simple, but it's so powerful. Just the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we frame, the way that we reframe things instead of yeah, like punishing yourself, you're rewarding yourself, taking care of yourself, nurturing yourself.
Exactly. Right. And just a simple switch there, because then you can say, okay, is this action, is this diet, is this whatever, is that supporting my end goal? Is it nourishing? Okay, then no, then I'm not going to, engage in it. Right. And then, tying to that, empowering yourself to understand, okay, what does, I'm experiencing X, Y, or Z today. What does that mean? What is my body trying to tell me? And instead of being mad at it for doing that, listen and respond. Like, so a perfect example would be, okay, if you're having cravings for carbohydrates, I feel like most women are like, oh, okay, well, I'm just not dedicated enough. I have cravings. I'm bad because of this. Whereas it's like, no, your body's asking. If you're craving carbohydrates, your body needs energy. It's asking for food. Instead of being mad at yourself, nourish it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I need to practice that in my life too. I'm just gonna be honest there.
I will even say it in my own life. I obviously preach it. I practice it to the best of my ability, but there's still opportunity for growth because you're trying to rewire years of diet culture, like, feedback, right? Most women from the start of puberty, it's like, okay, watch what you eat. Don't put that in your mouth. Like, I mean, unfortunately, we all have this kind of exposure and it's rewiring our brain and, wanting better for ourselves.
So shifting a little to, talk again about anxiety. So I know you said you were on anxiety medicine for several years. So
Yes.
what made you think, okay, hey, I want to come off of this, and how did you kind of transition off?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I always like to preface this conversation with I do not think anxiety medication is a bad thing, right? And I do believe that it is necessary. I'm so grateful that I had it because it allowed me to get to a space to where I could even take care of myself. And so I always like to preface that like anxiety medication is not the villain. It's not a bad guy. But what often happens is anxiety medication is a band-aid. It's supposed to help you, alleviate those symptoms immediately, but it doesn't address the root cause of the disruption in the first place. And so it's still important to take care and support those systems in conjunction with medication, because then that's how you truly not only feel better, but do address the root of it. And so I have many people, clients that I work with that continue to remain on medication. And so preface a big asterisk there, like I want nobody to feel bad about it. Um, but where it started for me is once I connected, okay, we have these huge hormonal shifts that we go through each and every month, right? There are 4 phases that we move through, and your key sex hormones are fluctuating across that time. And that does influence your mood, your energy. It influences your body's ability to metabolize food and handle intensity and workouts, all of that. And then I started to peel back, okay, what hormones deeply influence your chemical levels in your brain? And so that's going to be dopamine, serotonin are your biggest ones, but cortisol, because cortisol activates your sympathetic nervous system. And your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response, right? It basically is designed to help you quickly address whatever stressors in your life, and it should then deactivate and go back to homeostasis. Unfortunately, most of us don't live like that anymore. Our stress is not like that. It's chronic. It's never ending. And it's so much more than just a physical threat like it used to be, right? It's emotional, it's psychological, it's now, nutrient related. So in addressing that, I was like, okay, so knowing that dopamine, cortisol, and serotonin are kind of the big ones. I wanted then hormones are chemical messengers, right? They respond, they're produced by systems and they work to communicate with other systems to keep the ship operating. If you have a hormone disruption, that means that there's a system disruption. So I was like, okay, well, I know then serotonin, 95% of our body's serotonin is made in our gut biome. So I was like, okay, I need to focus, priority number one is addressing your gut health, right? Um, for cortisol and dopamine, those are deeply influenced by your HPA axis, which is your hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and adrenal cortex or adrenal glands, right? So peeling those back, it's like, okay, well, what things influence gut health and what things deeply influence adrenal health? And for gut, for most of us, okay, of course, eating a vibrant, having a probiotic is huge, right? Making sure that you have a diverse, at least 5 billion count probiotic that has multiple strains in it to promote diversity in your flora. But also, okay, thinking of, making sure that the integrity of your gut lining is supported. And so oftentimes, if there's a lot of chronic inflammation and chronic stress in your body, your lining of your gut can get broken down. And it means that even if you are taking a probiotic, your bacteria cultures aren't necessarily safe or secure because of the leaky junctions in your gut. And so pathogens and bacteria can enter the system, leading to bad overgrowth or disruption of healthy colonies. So I was like, okay, knowing that a probiotic is helpful, but also if inflammation is high in my body, then my probiotic is no longer helping or doing the job that it's supposed to. So then I started to think, okay, well, what causes inflammation? And guess what? When your adrenal glands are overworked, when your body has very stressed, cortisol is a pro-inflammation hormone. So they tie your gut and your brain tie back together. Your gut and your adrenal glands tie back together because of that complex feedback and relationship. So that's where I was like, okay, so what are the biggest stressors in my life that I can't control? Because that's what we focus on, in integrative nutrition. And at the time, I was not eating enough. I was eating like less than 1,200 calories a day. I wasn't eating carbohydrates. I was doing 60 plus minutes of cardio. Like I was doing all this stuff that was depriving my body. So I focused on, okay, not only do I need to eat enough, but I need to start incorporating nutrients that are going to support the system in reducing inflammation and that it support the systems in doing the jobs that they're designed to do. So that's when I started to slowly increase the amount of food that I was consuming over a period of time. That's when I started to add in specific foods that supported my hormones at each phase of my cycle. It's coined like cycle syncing now. A lot of women big on Instagram too. But that's a whole different topic. So I'll not dive too far there. Um, and I started to focus on, okay, what foods truly reduce inflammation in my body? Because I was at a space, at least in my journey, where I was like, I'm eating 1,200 calories. Like I can't eliminate anymore. And so all of those elimination protocols that were out there where it's like, no gluten, no dairy, no grains, no nightshades. Like I was like, that's too much. Like I'm going to be eating water at that point. And I already am. And it's not working. And so I focused on, okay, adding in a cup of leafy greens because the vitamins in there and the vitamin profile in leafy greens really, really help to reduce inflammation. Also, the fiber in that helps to support bacterial growth in the gut. I added in a cup of sulfur-rich vegetables because the sulfurs help to improve mitochondrial health of the cell, which reduces overall inflammation in the body. And then I added in a cup of colorful fruits and vegetables because those foods are high in antioxidants, which help to fight free radicals and inflammation and oxidation in the body. And so again, approaching it from eating more food, adding more nutrients in, releasing some of the stressors of you can't touch this or you can't have that. And it wasn't like this overnight transformation. I'm not, I would say it took me a year of that consistently. And then when I started to feel good and I wasn't having any panic attacks anymore, when I felt that I had, not only nourished my body to a space where the frequency of my anxiety was lessened, but also when it did occur, I had more ability to turn off the sympathetic nervous system response quickly. That's when I started to speak to my doctor and said, like, hey, I'm interested in transitioning off of my medication. And of course they were wary, right? And it was another, I would say, 6 to 8 months after that I gradually weaned off of everything and been since. But it took, it's not impossible. And I will say now that when I do have anxiety, I'm not immune to it. I literally had, a situation that happened this last weekend that triggered a lot of anxiety for me. But I was able to better control it. I knew how to support and nourish my body through it. I had strategies and tools that I learned in therapy to help me, successfully get my body back into a safe space. Um, and again, it's empowering to know that even if I had that moment of anxiety or that panic attack, that I was actually in control because I knew how to support my body through it.
Do you feel that when you got like the initial diagnosis of, anxiety and dealing with that, do you feel like were you just offered medication right away, or did they offer you any other ways to like learn how to cope with it, or was it just like here's some medicine?
Um, Gosh, so I would say when I was young and I was showing initial signs of anxiety, because I was young, I was offered more like, oh, go into therapy. And my parents were I was fortunate. My parents were pretty proactive in that. But when I was older, so when I was 23, it was just immediate. Here's a pill. Here's another pill. Oh, that pill's not working. Here's more. And so I definitely feel that there was a stark difference in like because I was older and adult now, it was no longer like, oh, like learn the coping mechanisms. It's like, oh, you're safe to take a medication, so here it is, and get out of our office.
Right. Like you're too old to learn how to cope. So just like there's
Yeah,
no
and I
hope for you.
even
Just take this medicine.
No, and like the first doctor I went to, the one who prescribed me Paxil. Seriously, guys, it's the worst. It's the worst thing I've ever been on. I remember like freaking out and dumping dumping it down my toilet the next day, calling my mom, saying like, "Mom, this drug is making me psycho. Like I can't." But he was just a regular like family practitioner. But then I went to like an actual psychiatrist, thinking like, okay, it's good to have somebody who could prescribe me something if I needed it. However, like I want to get these coping mechanisms. And even like I went through even multiple psychiatrists were just so quick to say, like, well, here's another medication. Oh, that didn't work. Like try lithium, try this. Like it was just at some point I felt like I was on this like concoction of pills and the side effects, like they weren't worth it.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people don't talk about that, the side effects that you deal with. It's like, well, you just have to deal with it. Either deal with the side effects or deal with the anxiety. That's your choice.
Yeah. And again, like after I can't even remember how many pills that they cycled me through. But I think my personal breaking point was the last one that I got on. It was called like Latuda or something to that extent. It was $1,000 a bottle
Oh my gosh.
with insurance.
With insurance.
With insurance. And I remember, again, I was 23. I was fortunate that my parents could support me with that. But I remember crying to my dad saying, like, I can't afford this. Like, I can't afford this. It's the only one that works for me and I can't afford this. I was like, and that's when I decided, like, and he kind of alluded to it. He was like, Tasha, like you have a degree in nutrition. Like, isn't there something that you can do? And I was like, you're right, Dad. There is. Like, thank you for reminding me. It's I feel so disheartened because if you're in that space right now where you're feeling out of options, like I hope this is a glimmer of hope to you because you have so many options and your body's not broken. Your body loves you. It loves you so much. It just needs you to like be its champion and be its advocate and to nourish it and to trust it or truly.
Yeah, I know that's definitely something, especially with like my PCOS diagnosis, it's something that I've struggled with is like trusting it to do what it needs to do. And, I didn't
Mhm.
have, like the regular cycles. I dealt with anxiety. I've dealt with all the other fun things from PCOS that I now know are related to PCOS that I thought were just random occurrences. And it's just, yeah, I'm working hard on the being nice to myself part.
Yeah. And I get that because like especially like living with PCOS, there's a lot of frustration and like, there's so many times where you're like, why are you doing this, body?
I know.
Can you just figure it out? Like, can you just be normal?
I
Um,
have said those exact words. Will you just be normal, please?
yeah, I literally like I remember seeing that. I was like, why can't I just be normal? But also like your body like I think it's almost like I tell people like my autoimmunity is my superpower. It could have been my greatest weakness and I feel like you probably like sometimes it can feel like that with PCOS but like it's going to be your greatest superpower because not only does it allow you to have the opportunity to really tune into your body, and really tune into what it needs and how to support it. But also now you get to share your story and how you've overcome some of these, challenges with all these amazing other women who are listening. And so again, just even that shift or just thinking to your body, like, yeah, this sucks sometimes, but I'm proud of you. Like it's important.
And that's one thing, that I wanted to say that, you had what seemed like all the odds stacked against you, which, for a lot of people, you could just give up and give in and, go on all the medications or, do whatever, but you didn't give up. And now look how far you've come despite
Thank
everything stacked against you. Like, I think that's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And again, in those moments, it feels dark. I'm not going to lie to you. Like it wasn't peachy. Like there's still times. But those struggles, I think the ones that we have when we're alone and we don't talk about, like I love to talk about because I want every woman to remind you, like to remember that like we all go through it in some way, shape, or form. It's just to not give up on yourself in that process. And, you know, I don't know if I said this, but to release that expectation or that timeline of healing that you have on yourself, that's important too. Like we have these, my body, I need to get pregnant in 6 months, or I need to lose 30 pounds in 3 months. And we have these like expectations of what we want our body to do. And that timeline really messes us up. Because if you're doing all the right things, if you're creating the environment for healing, if you're creating a lifestyle that perpetuates that healing continually, it's going to happen. I promise you that. But to remove that pressure of like, I have to do it by this timeline, again, relieves that stress. Like most of us live with such high levels of stress that we don't even know that we're stressed anymore. So you might think like, oh, well, I don't feel stressed. But even that psychological timeline that you're putting on yourself puts pressure, which adds stress. And if your body is in a state, especially if your sympathetic nervous system is just fried right now, if your adrenals are just fried right now, the stress threshold that your body can handle is extremely low. So to release that timeline and just say like, I'm going to focus on these habits. I'm going to focus on nourishing. I'm going to focus on, being consistent with that. The results will come.
And it makes so much sense. And yet, again, something I very much struggle with, as I know a lot of people do, especially when you're struggling with infertility. Even a month feels like a really long time when it's just not happening. And I know all of us live in a society of, almost instant gratification with a lot of things. So it's really hard to make yourself wait for something like that, even though
Oh,
it's something super important.
Exactly. And I literally just had a chat with my girlfriend who's struggling with her own fertility journey yesterday. And I said the same thing to her. I was like, I know it's so hard. I know like each month feels like an eternity, but a watched pot never boils. Like allow just know that it's possible for you. Do the habits that are going to perpetuate the results and the healing and the environment, and it will come. It will come, but it does like we just have these, and it's awful too because of I love Instagram. I've connected to so many amazing women because of that platform, but also that social media lie or the marketing that we see of like, oh, like it just happened overnight, like you can get this immediately, like
Yes.
that's not true. Oh,
Yeah, the people who are like, I tried for 3 years and then I did this one time and got pregnant the next month. And you're like, really?
yeah, really.
I don't
And
think so.
And even if like don't that might work for you, but each person is so uniquely different. Nutrition is the only science where something is 100% right for someone and 100% wrong entirely for someone else because of bioindividuality. And so even if that one thing worked for somebody to, again, perpetuate that belief that, oh, well, it worked for me, it's going to work for you, right? You got to grant yourself grace. And it not only doesn't need to work for your system, sure, but it has to work for your lifestyle. It has to work for your preferences. It has to be something that you enjoy because all of that breeds consistency, right? But if you are doing this because some influencer said to do it and you absolutely hate it and you're getting mad because they promised quick results and you're not getting it, like that, again, that's not feeding the end goal and it's only adding more anxiety.
Yes. Yeah, that definitely would stress me out more. Like they said this would work and it is not working.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I get overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming too, with just all of the information that's out there. I had one girl come to me and she was so anxious because she read all of these different fertility books and she was like, I don't even know what's right or what way is up anymore. And I was like, I know it's a lot because you're trying to piece all of this together. And I was like, at some point, you just lose sight of the end goal, which is just to create and nourish your body, like create a space to nourish your body. That's it. All the other stuff, it can go to the side.
Yeah, that's a really good reminder because I think we forget about the end goal and we're just focused on how to get there, but not
Yeah.
what we're getting to.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. And that's again where tying full circle didn't even mean to purposely do it, but like it's why it's important to, practice number one is envision that healthy version of yourself. Envision what that next level version of you is doing. What are they investing their time in, their energy in? How do they see themselves? And then it helps you to remember, like, okay, is this random fad or is this thing going to help perpetuate it? No, then I don't need it, right? And when you cut out all that noise, I will tell you again, less stress, less anxiety, like it all comes together.
It's crazy to me that we, like you mentioned, that we live in, such a stressful state that we don't even know we're stressed anymore. It's just our
Mhm.
normal. Like that's kind of sad when you think about it, that we're all just stressed out all the time.
All the time, all the time. Stress is so much more than the emotional and physical stress that we associate it with, right? If you're chronically under eating, your body is stressed out because it thinks it's in a famine state, right? If your circadian rhythm is disrupted because you don't have a consistent sleep schedule, that adds stress, right? That if your workouts are working against your body, even the workouts are a positive stressor, they're still perceived as a stress in your body. So if it's not the proper progressive overloads, if it's not an actual structured program, going in and just working harder is a threat to your body. And then you factor in, oh, I have bills and I have a high mortgage and I
And
have
a
a car
job and
payment.
yeah,
Yeah.
kids and
Yeah.
everything.
And trying to get, all of these different things. And so again, when it comes down to it in the integrative nutrition realm, it's like, okay, what are the stressors in life that you can control? Okay, you can control how you nourish your body. You can control how you move your body. You can control what habits and lifestyle, routines that you implement so that your body can be more resilient against that stress. Like you can't cut out all the noise of life. Like that's part of the human experience, but your body is resilient. Again, it wants to thrive for you. So if you give it all the tools, it'll better withstand the stress that happens. And then as a byproduct, you're not living in the state of chronic anxiety, chronic fear, because your basic needs are met.
And I think that's really great advice because I know me, like a lot of other people, I want to be in control of everything all the
Yeah.
time. And the older I get and the more I go through, the more I know like I'm in control of nothing ever. But I do like the advice to focus on the things that you can control. I
Mhm.
think that's great, because then it makes you more invested in the process and makes you feel more a part of it and it makes you feel like you're actually in control of something.
Absolutely. Like I said, I don't, like, I can only speak for mine. And it sounds like you have a similar experience, but like part of my anxiety was that I wasn't in control and that I
Mhm.
felt out of control of my body because it would go into panic when I didn't want it to. Right. And so I feel empowered that I can control how I nourish it. Right. I feel that that gives me some of my, independence control. What's the word I'm looking for? It gives me something back. I can't think of the word right now.
Kind
But
of like
even,
autonomy back, kind of, but
yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I don't think my brain knew where it was going with that one.
it's like it was going
Um,
somewhere.
it was trying. And the other thing too, like one helpful tool that my therapist gave me is again part of my anxiety is that out of control. Like I get freaked out when my sympathetic nervous system starts, ramping up my heart rate and giving me those, palpitations and all that stuff. So anytime I start to feel that overwhelm kick in, I go straight into a wall sit because it allows me to increase my heart rate on my terms. And that alone helps me stabilize and get back to a space where I'm like, okay, what do I really need to focus on to get me through this?
I like that. I don't like wall sits, so but
Yeah.
but yeah, it would definitely make you refocus. You need something to help you refocus.
Exactly. I don't love wall sits either. I have to, again, full transparency. I only do them when I'm anxious. But it does. It helps me focus, get back in. My everything stabilizes because I'm now in control of what is escalating versus not. And then I can be like, oh, okay, am I actually feeling extra anxious because I skipped a meal today and my blood sugar's disrupted? Am I feeling anxious today because I didn't eat enough food or enough carbohydrates? Am I feeling anxious because I didn't sleep well, right? And then I can respond to whatever that need is to help my body get back to a space where it can be resilient against stress.
And that's interesting to think about because I think a lot of these things we do them, but we don't know that that's what's causing the anxiety, like not eating enough or skipping a
Mhm.
meal here, or, and we just think, oh, we're anxious, but we don't realize that we're contributing more to it.
Yeah. I have you seen that meme? I'm sure you have, where it's like, no, you're not anxious. You just have had 3 cups of coffee and haven't eaten like more than
Yeah.
a scone in 2 days. And I was like, yeah, that definitely describes my early 20s. And no wonder I didn't feel yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, like, again, another trick of the trade is typically when you're very anxious, you don't have a lot of, it can be triggered by low serotonin levels in the body. So dopamine's kind of it's your super happy high hormone. You can get dopamine hits where they give you like a static joy. Um, Also, dopamine is what is typically influenced when you take like a drug. So that's why people get addicted to drugs is because of that dopamine response. And then serotonin is your calm, kind of like consistently happy hormone. I almost think like dopamine is like that fun, big, big party, whereas, serotonin is kind of that calm, consistent hormone. But if you're feeling a lot of anxiety that's kind of chronic and like unrelenting, oftentimes it's because your body is struggling to make enough serotonin or those serotonin receptors might not be in the best shape. So even if there is serotonin, it's not able to bind and communicate the message. Eating carbohydrates consistently, like nice, high quality, complex carbohydrates, like whole grains, starchy vegetables, fruits, things like that, they actually help to improve serotonin production and serotonin receptor function. So even just if you're feeling super anxious in a day, going and eating more carbs can help.
Is that why we crave the carbs when we're anxious?
Yes. Yep. Exactly. It's again, and most women, I think, are pretty quick to say like, oh, I'm just like not, I'm anxious and I'm like ditching my diet. I'm being bad or naughty. But no, it's like your body's screaming for help. Please help me.
Give me the carbs I need, please.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at some point, if you continue to ignore that, override happens, right? Biological override. Again, very primal. Your body's made to survive. So it will go into a pure survival mode. It'll override any will that you have. And in the process, you've disrupted a lot of hormones, including insulin and leptin at that time. And so it leads to more risk of binge eating because your leptin, which is your satiation hormone, like it tells you that you're full, if it's chronically being released as a result of that stress, you could become leptin resistant. And so then your body no longer responds to it. And then you're like, why am I in the pantry eating 8 bags of chips and I can't stop it? You know? It's not your lack of self-control. It's that we've been ignoring those cues for too long that your body just went into override mode.
There's so many like little things working together.
So it's so many. And I tell like I had one woman the other day, she was like, it's like you need a degree to do this. And I was like, it's yeah, yeah. Like nutrition is a science. It's so complex. Like your body is the most advanced chemical equation and that is walking. It's over 500 enzymatic and biochemical reactions are happening at any given moment just to keep you alive. It is pretty cool. But that means that everything is interconnected. And so even the small habits, they add up to big change. Like if you leave this podcast today, you turn it off and you start eating every 3 hours. If you start focusing on it, adding a cup of colorful fruits and veggies, leafy greens and sulfur rich veggies to your day, it seems small, but that over time adding up is going to lead to huge, huge healing in your body.
And I think doing it like one little thing at a time sometimes makes it more manageable than trying to overhaul the whole thing like all at once and then you give up because it's too much.
Absolutely, 100%. Habit change is the only way to create long change. And think about it, like the beliefs that you have around nutrition, your health, the habits that you have around them, it's taken a lifetime to develop. So it's going to take more than a few days or weeks or even months to really create, to have these habits and to get them interwoven into your lifestyle so that they become routine. And so it's better to do a small habit at a time so you can really, trial and test the waters, make sure it works for you. How does it work for your life? How does it navigate with your kids or your responsibilities? How do you, stick to it when you're stressed and you have to actively think about it because it's not a routine or ritual yet? And in the process of shifting habits, like doing one at a time and being super successful, there's also a neurological component to it, right? It helps you retrain the reward center in your brain. So where your brain and body recognize that, ooh, not only do I like this pathway, but it is more effective. So I'm going to replace the routine that was previously there. But to successfully do that, you have to get gratification from it. It has to be something that you feel confident doing. So implementing one habit at a time and being super successful and seeing that confidence, that helps you to rewire the brain and then to be able to be more successful in doing the next habit and so on and so on.
Then it makes you healthy and helps you feel like, yay, I like rewarded myself. I did something good.
Absolutely. Like instead of that, like, oh, I tried to change my whole diet and lifestyle and I fell off the wagon and I suck. Like, right? Like even
Yeah, we've all been
again,
there.
all been there. And then you think about it, like, again, I feel it's always easier said than done because I'm sure, like, listening to this, you're like, this makes so much sense. Like, why don't I always do that? But it takes practice.
Yeah, it's definitely not a do it for one day and you're cured thing.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So is there anything else that you would like to share or add?
Ooh, you know, I think we've covered, I think everything. The biggest there's a lot to it. And I hope if you leave with anything today, it's, focus on nourishing your body, focus on envisioning that healthy version of yourself. I don't like the word healthy, but that vibrant version of yourself. And realistically, this three small habits that if you're looking to start, supporting your anxiety and kind of taking control, I go back to is get on a probiotic if you're not already. If you're on a probiotic, make sure it's at least a 5 billion or a 5 billion count and multi-strand. Start adding in more nutrients, right? Eat every 3 hours, eat a complex carb with every, meal, and try to add in the colorful fruits and veggies, the sulfur-rich veggies, and the leafy greens. And I think those three habits alone will really, really be transformative for you.
I'm definitely going to work on those habits myself.
Ooh, good.
So if people wanted to find more information about you, where would they go for that?
So I think the two places I would recommend starting is I am on Instagram. Like I said, I love to educate there, so definitely check it out. I'll share my link so you could share with your followers. And then also on my website, I do have a free hormone imbalance assessment that allows you to plug in your symptoms. And we help identify what hormones are the biggest focus in your body or that need the most support. And you get a customized blueprint strategy with like nutrition habits, lifestyle habits, and fitness habits that you could implement to start supporting your unique needs. So that's always a wonderful way to start your journey.
Yeah, that sounds super helpful.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of this great information with us.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. It's been such a wonderful time, and I'm so excited to, continue to connect.
Thank you so much, Tasha, for sharing this amazing information with us. As we talked about, it's so frustrating that so many of us aren't taught these important things about our own bodies. I had no idea that anxiety was so closely related to my hormones and to my PCOS. And anxiety is something I have long struggled with, and I always thought it was something I just had no control over and just had to learn to deal with. After speaking with you, I definitely know a few steps I can take to help improve my anxiety levels along with my own overall health. I also really appreciated talking with you about how to stop expecting so much from our bodies so quickly. We try something new and expect it to work the next month, then get mad when it doesn't. And I know I'm guilty of doing these things too. I'm impatient. I want everything to work right away. Because sometimes the changes honestly feel hard, and I don't really want to be doing them. I want to just live my life and have it happen. Crazy, right? But I think once we can actually commit to these improvements and not see them as punishment, then we will appreciate the changes more. Just remember, baby steps, one thing at a time. You've got this. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.